You know that feeling when you wake up on a Monday, and something just feels off. That was me last week. I sat at my desk in the translation department, nursing lukewarm coffee from my chipped Queen of Syntax mug, watching the clock crawl. The whole floor had this weird hum, a mix of excitement and dread. It all started 3 weeks prior when the company announced a new CEO. I didn't give it much thought. Grayson Manufacturing was no stranger to leadership changes. But the moment Marcus Bell strode through those glass doors, I knew things were different, and not in a good way. The man was late to his own introductory meeting. Seriously, he showed up 15 minutes after everyone had already awkwardly clapped through the board chair's opening remarks. He sauntered in like he owned the place, which, technically, he now did, reeking of expensive cologne and something else. It wasn't obvious, but I have a keen sense for these things, a faint trace of alcohol. Not like last night's wine, more like poorly disguised liquid courage. He rarely smiled, not genuinely. His face was all sharp boardroom angles and practiced smirks, the kind of man who spouted phrases like synergize global directionality and believed it meant something. On day 2, he tried to restructure the international accounts division, only to realize he didn't even know which markets we served. He called our South Korea liaison, the guy from Singapore, in front of the entire department. Cringe doesn't even begin to cover it. But it wasn't just his ignorance. It was his demeanor. He treated meetings like interruptions and people like obsolete office supplies. He didn't ask questions. He made decisions, usually poor ones. And there I was, Mary Cooper, 17 years with the company. My job, on paper, was straightforward: handle translations for our global clients, especially high-stakes presentations and contracts. In reality, I was a human bridge. I spoke 5 languages fluently and could read nuance like most people read spreadsheets. I'd helped close deals that funded entire departments, but lately, I felt like a ghost. Marcus never met my gaze, never inquired about my work, never acquired a single foreign client meeting. At our last monthly roundtable, he cut my update short to ask the marketing director about font choices. I should have known then that something was brewing, something about Marcus's tone, his clipped responses, and his sudden interest in streamlining resources sent shivers down my spine. I'd seen this before. Executives with shiny resumes and zero real-world understanding sweeping in with budget-cutting brooms. But you can't quantify trust or cultural sensitivity on a spreadsheet. You can't replace years of relationship building with Google Translate. Still, I kept my head down, kept working. Maybe a part of me believed that if I just remained professional, it would all blow over. I didn't know then that the storm was about to hit. And I had no idea just how far Marcus Bell's ignorance and arrogance would take things. Wednesday began like any other day, with me trying to snatch a few quiet minutes to prepare notes for an upcoming client call. My headset was on, half listening to a French training webinar, when I caught a flicker of movement down the corridor. A new face, red heels clicking too confidently, lipstick too bold for the building's muted walls. She walked like she owned the place, no badge. No hesitation, just a quick scan of the room and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "This is Lana," chirped someone from HR, materializing behind her with the forced politeness of someone trying to wrap a bomb in gift paper. "She's joining us as our new SEO specialist. She'll be working closely with the web team and assisting marketing." Lana gave a small wave, then took the seat 2 desks down from mine, Rebecca's old desk. Poor Rebecca left 2 weeks ago, burnt out from endless campaigns and Marcus's new obsession with aggressive visibility. I'd been sad to see her go. I returned to my work. I had a long morning ahead, translating the executive summary of our newest partnership proposal into Japanese, then prepping for the team meeting at 10. I didn't have time for introductions or awkward small talk. But Lana had time for everything. She started with a loud phone call on speaker, something about dinner plans, organic reach, and how she'd finally escaped that garbage agency. Her voice sliced through the office like a buzzsaw. I shot her a glance, thinking maybe she'd realize she wasn't alone. She didn't. By 9 o'clock, she had started commenting on my monitor. "You don't use Grammarly, huh? Brave." I gave a short smile. "I've been writing in 5 languages since before Grammarly existed." She smirked. "Right, but I can't be that bad." I turned back to my screen. The comment didn't sting. It just surprised me. I'd barely spoken to her, and she was already jabbing. Then came the kicker. At 9:32, we were gathering in the small conference room for our weekly strategy sync. People trickled in, murmuring hellos, balancing notepads and coffee. I took my usual seat near the window. Lana walked in behind me, paused, and said, just loud enough to be heard, "Oh, I guess this is the lifetime employee corner." Heads turned. A few chuckled. I didn't. I looked up, steady and even. "Good morning, Lana." She blinked, then grinned. Like we were friends. Just teasing. "You've probably seen so many people come and go, right?" I wasn't going to play along. I opened my laptop, clicked open the presentation. She sat beside me, too close. "What are you working on?" she whispered, leaning over. Her perfume was cloying and strong. I angled my screen away. Internal summary. It's in Japanese. "Oh," she said, dragging the syllables like chewing gum. "Google Translate must love you." I said nothing, because if I opened my mouth, I wouldn't be able to keep it professional. She laughed quietly, leaning in again. "Hey, don't look so serious. We're all friends here, right?" Except her hand brushed my arm as she said it, fingers trailing a little too long, too deliberate. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't innocent. And the room, bustling a second ago, suddenly felt 10 degrees colder. I shifted away sharply. "Meeting's starting," I said. Her smile didn't fade, but something in her eyes flickered. Something sharper than amusement, almost like she was waiting for a reaction, like she wanted me off balance. And for a second, I realized this wasn't about teasing. It was a test. But I'd been in boardrooms with executives who shouted in languages they didn't understand. I'd translated threats and apologies, negotiated mergers between companies that barely trusted each other. I wasn't going to flinch now, not from her. I turned back to my notes, heart thumping, stomach twisting, not from fear, but from something worse, recognition. Because I knew this game. I just didn't know why she decided I was the target yet. The meeting was already off to a bad start. Marcus was late again, as usual. The rest of us sat around the glass table under flickering fluorescent lights, scrolling through slides on our tablets and pretending this wasn't our 6th cost optimization session in 2 weeks. I sat near the end. As always, not quite invisible, but easy to overlook if you weren't paying attention. Most weren't. Lana strutted in just before Marcus, wearing a pencil skirt that screamed aggressive promotion track. She winked at one of the marketing guys and sat directly across from me, laying her phone face up like she expected urgent fan mail. Marcus entered finally, sleeves rolled, tie loosened, like he wanted us to think he was busy being brilliant. He dropped a folder on the table, didn't bother with a greeting. "All right," he said, "we've got to cut deeper." A murmur spread across the table. No one made eye contact. "Executive directive from above," he continued. "If we want to protect our international rollout, we've got to trim non-core roles." Non-core. It's amazing how quickly your stomach turns. At 2 words, Lana raised a hand casually. "I've reviewed the digital operations list. We're overlapping in a few areas. Marketing automation has already cut localization time by 40% with AI integrations. We've streamlined most of the language workflows." Marcus nodded like she'd handed him a solution on a silver platter. She turned to me. "I mean, no offense, Mary, but translation in 2025. There are tools that can do it faster. We should be reallocating those funds." And there it was. She smiled as if she weren't talking about me, as if I were a broken stapler. Marcus didn't hesitate. "I've been thinking the same thing. Look, I don't need regular translators in the company. Google Translate can handle it. Besides, it's not like we're translating Shakespeare." I stared at him, at Lana, at the pale-faced assistant who couldn't meet my gaze. I felt every eye avoid mine, like my grief was contagious. But I didn't flinch. I straightened my back, closed my tablet, packed, nothing. "I understand," I said calmly, standing. Marcus blinked. Maybe he expected tears. Maybe he expected me to plead, to argue. Instead, I smiled a small quiet smile. "I wish you luck at your next meeting." He furrowed his brow, confused. Lana smirked like she'd won something. I walked out without a single word more. They didn't ask where I was going. They didn't realize who was coming. Monday was 3 days away, and they had no idea what that meeting would become without me in the room. I didn't leave right away. I probably should have. I had my dignity still intact and a clean exit line. But as I stepped out into the hallway, the weight of what just happened hit me, not as humiliation, but frustration. Not at being fired, but at the ignorance behind it. So I turned around. I stepped back. into the room where Marcus was already moving on to the next efficiency measure. And Lana was tapping away on her phone like she hadn't just erased nearly 2 decades of trust in 5 minutes. Wait, I said, my voice level but firm. You need to understand something. Marcus glanced up, mildly annoyed. Mary, I'm not just a translator, I said. I'm the liaison for our international partners. I've built direct communication with our clients in Japan, Germany, Argentina, and South Korea. I'm not giving them text. I'm giving them US context, nuance, relationships. Lana rolled her eyes. We have CRM data and language tools for that now. You don't understand, I replied, trying to stay composed. It's not about words, it's about trust. Some of these clients don't speak to anyone else, they don't sign without me in the room. I've spent years building those bridges. Marcus leaned back in his chair like I was interrupting his Netflix binge. Mary, I appreciate your passion, but you're not irreplaceable. No one is. I'm not saying I'm irreplaceable, I said, though my voice was shaking slightly now. I'm saying you're cutting out the only person who understands how these partners think, how they negotiate. They won't respond to Google Translate. They won't respond to cold emails or flashy dashboards. They'll go cold, and you won't even see it coming. Lana let out a short laugh. Wow, confident, aren't we? Marcus nodded, almost condescendingly. You're clearly emotionally attached to your role, but this isn't personal. It's just business. You might be overestimating your importance, Mary. Overestimating. That word hit harder than I expected, as if the years I spent working late into the night, learning cultural idioms, perfecting honorifics, and reworking contract language until every clause was airtight, meant nothing. As if I was just some sentimental employee clinging to a dying role. They saw me as a line item, and now they were erasing the line. I stood there, heart pounding in my chest, wanting to scream the truth into their blind, smug faces. But I didn't, because I realized something else in that moment. You can't explain fluency to people who only speak in buzzwords. So I nodded, just once, and I walked out. They had no idea what they'd just thrown away, but they'd find out soon. The first few hours were the worst. I walked home slower than usual, my bag oddly weightless, like even it knew I was no longer part of something? The sun was still out, but everything looked dull, washed out, like someone had turned down the saturation on the world. By the time I got inside, the silence of my apartment hit me like a slap. I dropped my keys into the ceramic bowl by the door and just stood there. No buzzing work phone, no emails, no calendar alerts reminding me of partner follow-ups. Just stillness. I sat on the couch and stared out the window, arms folded tightly around myself, like I was trying to hold all the years together. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to call them Marcus, Lana, HR someone to explain, again, to make them understand that I wasn't just a cog in the wheel. But the truth, a louder part of me, didn't want to give them the satisfaction. So I sat and wondered, can they really manage without me? Could Marcus, with his copy-paste charisma and buzzword bingo, navigate the subtle power plays of our South Korean suppliers? Could Lana explain the delicate honor culture that our Tokyo partners insisted on upholding in every contract line? Could Google Translate tell them when a single misused pronoun could quietly kill $1 million deal? Could a machine read the pause before a sentence, the unsaid tension in a video call, the buried meaning in a single hi? I already knew the answer. But the waiting, that was the hard part. That night, I barely slept. My phone lay silent on the nightstand, dark except for the occasional promotional spam. I didn't expect them to call, but I was waiting for her. Because the next morning was Monday, and Emily, my friend, my closest confidant in the department, would be in the room. She wasn't just a colleague. She'd been there for my first promotion, my worst flu, and the time I once cried in the break room because a client called me by my voice in a thank you letter. If anyone understood, it was Emily. She texted at 9:04 a.m. He's here. Trident team walked in 2 minutes ago. Then silence. I didn't even breathe. I just stared at the screen, the blue chat bubble glowing like a lighthouse in the fog. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Still nothing. Then at 9:47 a.m., another message. Something's wrong. My heart skipped. What happened? I typed back instantly. No interpreter. They assumed someone else could do it. Thomas Delqua isn't speaking, just sitting there. Alice looks furious. I clutched the phone tighter. Of course, they thought someone could just fill in. Another bubble popped up. Marcus tried using an app. I kid you not. My lips parted in disbelief, or maybe awe. I couldn't tell. Alice didn't even translate that. She just looked at him. Then came the last message. Thomas hasn't signed anything, said 4 words through Alice. We will not stay long. I sat back on the couch, phone resting on my lap. I exhaled. Finally, they were finding out. They were finding out the one thing I never needed to argue. You can't cut the voice and still expect the room to understand you. Tuesday morning felt like waiting for a thunderstorm that never came. I stayed in bed longer than usual, scrolling through the news, my inbox, LinkedIn, anything that might tell me how the meeting had ended. Part of me wanted chaos. The other part wanted silence to mean regret. I even imagined Marcus sweating through his overpriced shirt, stammering through an apology to Thomas DeLo. But by noon, nothing. No headlines, no viral stories, no desperate emails begging me to return. Just stillness. That afternoon, my phone finally buzzed. Emily, can I call you? Seconds later, we were on the line. I didn't even say hello. Just, what happened? She sighed. Everything went fine. Silence. Fine, I repeated, trying not to sound as gutted as I felt. I mean, not at first, she said quickly. When the Trident team arrived, Thomas looked around for you. He even asked Alice, signed it pretty clearly, where's Mary? I shut my eyes. Of course he did, and I asked. Lana stepped in, Emily said, with a tone that made it clear she wasn't a fan. She told them that you'd moved on. Said we had new tools in place. She brought up the translation software demo she'd seen online, claimed it was just as effective. I could almost picture it. Her rehearsed smile, her calculated head tilt. The way she probably said just as effective, like it was backed by a decade of research instead of a tech blog headline. Then what? I asked, voice small. Thomas looked at Alice, Emily continued, and for a minute, I thought they were going to walk. But they didn't. Alice nodded once, and they stayed. They signed, Mary. Full renewal, even the expansion clause. It's done. I felt something inside me deflate, not because I wanted the company to crash without me, but because some small, stupid part of me had hoped I mattered more than a click and translate button. Emily must have heard the silence in my breathing. They only signed because Alice intervened, she added gently. She did most of the talking. She steered everything. I think she was smoothing it over, saving face. It wasn't a win, it was survival. But it didn't matter now. Not to Marcus, not to Lana. All they'd see were signatures on a contract and a reason to move on. Thanks for telling me, I said quietly. Are you okay? Emily asked. I will be, but the truth, I wasn't. Because even if they'd scraped by on one meeting, I knew what they didn't. They were building a future on a fault line. And when it cracked, when trust thinned, when nuance disappeared, when the tools failed to read a breath the wrong way, there'd be no one left to translate what went wrong. It started with a single phone call, then another, then 20 emails. By 7:13 a.m. on Wednesday, I was already staring at my phone screen, pulsing with alerts like it had a heartbeat of its own. Emily's name flashed across the top. I hadn't even made it to the kitchen yet. I answered immediately. Everything's falling apart, she said. No hello, no preambly. I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching the phone. What happened? There was a sharp inhale. The contract, the Trident deal. It's wrong. Wrong how? They signed the version Lana had prepared, she said, her voice pitched tight, the one that was run through auto-translate. The Japanese version. It wasn't accurate. I was suddenly wide awake. Not accurate how? What's the clause discrepancy? Multiple, she said. Profit-sharing terms were mispraised. Oversight conditions got switched. A couple of the limitations on operational control got flipped, literally reversed. In structure, the translation stripped out the soft, conditional language and replaced it with direct affirmatives. I blinked. So the document says Trident has full decision-making control now. Yes, and a 3% performance bonus backdated to last quarter. I went cold. That clause was never approved. I know. Emily's voice dropped, almost a whisper. They own us, Mary. For the next fiscal year. They can revise scope, timelines, even staffing. And it's legal. They signed it yesterday, and it's already been countersigned by the Trident team. They handed it to Alice after the meeting. I sat there, stunned. All the fight I'd swallowed, all the things I hadn't said, and now this. What are they doing about it? I finally asked. Marcus is flipping out. HR locked down the project folders. Legal is tearing through both language versions. Lana's claiming she only used the tools she was told to. And the CEO, he's trying to reach Trident. Good luck with that, I muttered. Yeah, he's already sent 2 meeting requests to their liaison team, she said. No response. He even tried calling Alice directly. Her assistant told him she was unavailable until further notice. My hand shook slightly as I lowered the phone, pressing it against my cheek. And then Emily added, after a pause, they asked for you. I froze. What? Trident, one of their directors. They asked if Mary Cooper would be attending the follow-up negotiation. I didn't speak. Emily exhaled. And Lana told them you'd been let go. Silence on the line. Do you know what they said after that? She continued. Nothing. They just nodded politely, quietly. But the temperature in the room shifted. Like someone had just slammed a door no one could see. I pictured it. Trident's executive team seated across the long glass table, expressions calm but unreadable. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from confusion, the kind that comes from disappointment, from a decision already made. They're not angry, Mary, she said more quietly. They're insulted. Of course they were. You don't build a relationship through a screen. You don't earn trust through a software interface. You don't replace 2 decades of cultural nuance with an API. They're giving us a chance to fix it, Emily said, but they haven't committed to anything. They haven't agreed to renegotiate. They haven't even promised another meeting. And Marcus wants a miracle, she replied flatly. He's trying to push through a revised contract draft. He's calling in a certified interpreter to mediate a video call tomorrow. But between us, the partners have already gone quiet. That silence. I knew that silence. It wasn't a delay, it was a verdict. They'll cancel, I said softly. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon, quietly. No headlines. Just gone. Emily didn't argue. I think so too. There was a long pause between us, and in that pause, I realized something else, something Marcus hadn't figured out yet. They didn't lose the deal because of the contract. They lost it because of what the contract symbolized. They told our partners I wasn't necessary, that their voice, their culture, their expectations were a line item. Trident didn't walk away because of the money. They walked away because no one listened, and when they finally do, no one will understand what they're saying. By Thursday morning, there was no more pretending. The air around the company was different, brittle, quiet, like the moment right before glass shatters. Emily texted me at 8:03 a.m., short and breathless. It's over. My chest tightened. What's over? I replied, already knowing the answer. She called instead of texting. They're pulling out, she said, not even waiting for me to say hello. Trident. The Japanese deal is dead. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. What happened? Emily's voice was shaking now. They sent a formal notice this morning through legal. It's brutal. Professional, but brutal. Read it to me. She cleared her throat, then spoke slowly, as if reciting something carved in stone. After internal review and consultation with our board, we regret to inform you that Triton Group is terminating all pending collaboration with Grayson Manufacturing effective immediately. This decision is based on what we deem an unprofessional handling of critical documentation, a lack of cultural respect, and a negligent attitude toward communication protocol during the negotiation process. I closed my eyes, but she wasn't finished. The recent substitution of professional translation with automated tools during legal finalization without our consultation demonstrated a disregard for precision, transparency, and mutual respect. We can no longer proceed with a partner unwilling to prioritize diligence and integrity. Silence settled between us. Then quietly, Emily added, they named her. I looked up. Lana. Yeah, she whispered. They specifically mentioned her in an internal memo. Said the SEO specialist displayed a dismissive attitude, lacked the qualifications to facilitate intercultural exchange, and failed to recognize the severity of her role. I let out a slow breath. And Marcus, he's in with the board. Has been for hours. Legal says the company could lose up to $12 million in projected revenue and expansion credits. It's not just the Trident contract. Other clients are watching. Some of them were tied to that deal. Of course they were. Because Trident wasn't just a client. They were a signal. When you lose their trust, the whole network starts to flicker. This could collapse a whole quarter's forecast, Emily said. The CFO is panicking. PR is drafting a holding statement. And Lana. She's vanished from the floor. I didn't feel triumphant. Not even vindicated. What I felt was colder. They didn't just lose a deal, they lost face. In Japan, that's not just bad business. It's unforgivable. They reduced a relationship years in the making to a botched PDF file and a few empty buzzwords. They dismissed my work, my insight, my presence as if it were optional. And now they were paying the price. But here's the cruelest part. I still could have saved them if they had just listened. It was 2:41 p.m. when my phone rang. I was sitting by the window, curled up with a blanket and a notebook I hadn't touched in months. I'd been scribbling ideas, freelance plans, maybe even starting something of my own. I didn't recognize the number, but something about the timing made me answer. Mary Cooper. The voice was tight, polite, carefully rehearsed. Yes, this is Jordan from Grayson's executive office. I'm calling on behalf of the leadership team. They've asked me to reach out to you directly. I let the silence hang. I believe you've heard what happened, he added. I have. There was a long pause, then a breath. We'd like to formally invite you to return in your previous capacity, or potentially a higher role, depending on your interest. The company deeply regrets the recent oversight, and on behalf of Mr. Bell and the executive committee, we want to apologize. I blinked slowly. Oversight? Well, we acknowledge that the decision to terminate your role was made hastily, and the reliance on automated systems was misguided. Misguided, that word. So gentle, so sanitized. And what about Lana? I asked calmly. There was a tight pause. Ms. Fellon is no longer handling international accounts. Disciplinary action is under review? I didn't flinch. That's not what I asked. Another pause. What do you require to return? I stood up, walked to the window, and stared at the city, blinking beneath gray clouds. I want a formal apology, I said. From her, not a press release, not a line in a memo. I want her to say it to my face that she disrespected me, underestimated me, and that her arrogance cost the company millions. Silence. And the voice said quietly, and financial compensation, I said, voice clear. Not a bonus, not a performance token. I want damages for wrongful termination and reputational harm. You fired me publicly, dismissed me like I was replaceable, and let her use me as a punchline. You want me back? Pay for what that did to me. He didn't answer for several long seconds. We'll need to speak with legal, he said carefully. You do that. May I ask one thing? Sure. Would you consider returning if those conditions are met? I paused just long enough to make the weight of my silence clear. If you can't understand why I deserve both, you never deserved me in the first place. Then I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just went back to my notebook. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting to be recognized. I was defining my own worth. Friday morning, the company pulled out all the stops. I wasn't planning to go in, but they asked, insisted, and something in me wanted to look them in the eye one last time. I wore black, not for drama, but for clarity. No colors, no softness, just truth. When I stepped off the elevator onto the executive floor, the entire office was gathered. A few heads turned, others tried to look casual, like they hadn't spent the last week watching their walls crumble. Marcus stood off to the side, face gray, hands clasped. The CFO was there too, arms folded, lips thin. But it was Lana who stepped forward. She looked deflated. The confidence was gone. She clutched a stack of papers like a shield, her blazer a little too crisp, like it was borrowed confidence. And in that moment, I saw it. She wasn't powerful, she was protected. And now that protection had vanished. Mary, she began, voice trembling slightly, I owe you a very public apology. The room was dead silent. I spoke out of turn, she said. I undermined your work. I dismissed your expertise, and I said things. Deeply disrespectful things that reflected ignorance and arrogance. I was wrong. Her voice cracked. I believed that tools could replace people, that speed was more important than understanding. And because of that, I cost this company a partnership we spent a decade building. She looked up. You were the bridge. I burned it. I'm sorry. A few murmurs rippled. Someone actually nodded. Marcus shifted like he wanted to say something, but I held up my hand. I looked Lana in the eye. Thank you, I said. It takes something to say that out loud. She nodded cautiously, hopeful. But I'm not coming back. Silence, the room stiffened. I don't owe this company another minute of my time, I continued, voice calm. When I was here, I was invisible until I wasn't. You saw my value only after you lost it, and now you want to recover your reputation on my back. I turned slightly so they all heard me. I'm not a symbol. I'm not a rescue plan. I'm a professional who deserved respect before it cost you millions. I paused. And just so you know, I've accepted another offer. Lana blinked. Marcus straightened. The Japanese partners? He asked. I smiled, small but certain. They called me the day after they pulled out. Said they wanted to work with someone who understood not just their language, but their values. I'll be overseeing their North American expansion. A gasp somewhere in the room. A dropped pen. Lana's lips parted slightly. I didn't walk away from this company, I added. I walked towards something better. Then I walked out. No applause, no banners, no dramatic music. Just the sound of heels on tile, doors closing behind me, and a freedom I'd earned word by word, hand by hand. Later that night, I stood on the balcony of my new office, city lights stretching into forever. This time, I wasn't the translator, I was the voice, and they would never forget it. Life has a strange way of teaching you who you really are, usually right after someone tries to erase you. After I walked out of Grayson for the last time, I didn't look back. Not because I was bitter, but because I didn't need to. I had already lived my proof. Every word I'd translated, every hand I'd shaken, every bridge I'd built, none of it needed their validation anymore. Trident didn't just offer me a job. They offered me purpose. They made me director of global cultural strategy, which is a fancy way of saying, we trust your voice, and we want to amplify it. The first time I sat in a meeting with their Tokyo office as an equal, not an assistant, not an afterthought, felt something shift inside me. Not pride, not revenge, just peace. Like I'd finally arrived where I was meant to be. I didn't just get a new title. I built a team. I hired overlooked voices, language experts, cultural consultants, women who'd been told they were too niche or too soft-spoken. Together, we created a space where fluency wasn't just about words, it was about respect. Sometimes, people from Grayson reach out, quietly, carefully. A few even apologized. Some were just curious. Do you miss it? Not even a beat. Not at all. Because here's the thing, losing that job didn't break me. It showed me how strong I'd become without anyone noticing. It reminded me that your worth isn't something someone else can calculate on a spreadsheet or reduce to a line item. Your worth is in what stays behind when you're gone. And when I left, I didn't leave silence. I left a message: respect people before you need them, ask questions before you assume. And never, ever confuse technology with trust. I still carry the little ceramic cup Thomas gave me, tucked safely on my new desk. Not as a souvenir of where I came from, but as a symbol of what happens when you choose to honor the language of people, not just profits. And every time someone new joins our team, I tell them the same thing. You're not here to be a cog, you're here to be a voice. And I mean it. Because that's the legacy I'm building now. One fluent, fearless step at a time.